Let's all agree on some things before we start this video. Hockey's a team sport, right? There's no I in team, right? And no player deserves preferential treatment, right? Well, there might be exceptions to that. This right here, to me, is one of the most consequential dang-its in NHL history. We are talking about Patrick Roy's last game as a member of the Montral Canadiens. I'll set the stage. December 2nd, 1995, at the Montreal Forum. It's a game between the Montreal Canadiens and the visiting Detroit Red Wings. The Montreal Canadiens were, of course, victorious in 1993, winning the Stanley Cup. After their cup in 93, the Habs lost in the first round in a 7-game series against the Boston Bruins in 1994, but in 1995, they went undefeated in the Stanley Cup playoffs because they didn't make them. Beginning in December 1995, about a quarter of the way through the 95-96 season, the Habs were still kind of meh, but you have Patrick Roy. I've seen a lot of debate over the past couple months of who is the greatest goalie of all time, and Dominik Hasek's name is constantly brought up. Hasek was so cartoonishly good for a long stretch of years, but Patrick Roy's career, the numbers and the hardware, I think is the only one that matches up. You say, what about Martin Brodeur? I say, what about Martin Brodeur? That's another video focus. On this night, December 2nd, 1995, Patrick Roy and his ho-hum Montreal Canadiens take on the powerhouse Detroit Red Wings, but Patrick Roy sporting a .917 save percentage. He was formidable. And by that I mean extremely difficult to beat, which might have made it somewhat concerning when Igor Larionov and the Detroit Red Wings scored a power play goal just over 3 minutes into the game to make it 1-0 Detroit.
Fedorov, Larionov, there's Primo parked in front, Larionov walking in, Patrick Roy, and he scores on the rebound. Igor Larionov.
And about 8.5 minutes into the game, Vyacheslav Kozlov bags one. It's a 2-0 Detroit lead.
Corner as Popovich went down. Sharp angle, Fedorov took a shot, loose, Larionov, Kozlov scores.
About a minute later, fear not, Mark Recchi scores. It's 2-1. They got a game. It's a game. A minute and 1 second later, Vyacheslav Kozlov scores his second of the game to make it 3-1 Detroit, and it's starting to get concerning.
Now forechecking is Kozlov, who has the go-ahead goal, and another as Kozlov took a shot that hit something and went into the net.
I don't know if it hit Fedorov, but without question, he went right in front of the goal crease. And that puck sliced off somebody's stick on the way through, and Fedorov, watch him. He's in the corner on the left of your screen. Right through, and he's, well, maybe not as close to the front as it looked from our angle.
Yeah, I think it hit Quintel in front of the goal. But this is the second time this period where the the Wings are able to walk right out in the slot.
Then with just over 2 minutes to go in the first period, Montreal Canadiens defenseman Patrice Brisebois takes a checking from behind penalty. He gets 5 in a game. What follows is complete disaster. The power play begins, and almost immediately, Nicklas Lidstrom scores. It's now 4-1 in the first period.
Great chance to change that. Lidstrom scores! Didn't take long, did it?
It's okay, regroup, you'll be fine. Nope, it's a 5-minute major. Less than a minute later, Greg Johnson scores. It's now 5-1 for Detroit, heading into intermission.
Out in front, gives it to Johnson. Yzerman in front. That's cleared by Quintal. Coffey keeps it in at the line with now 1 minute left. Yzerman to score again! Another power play goal. That's 3 for the Red Wings in this first period.
Well, I don't know the last time the Montreal Canadiens allowed 5 goals in one period. And you know, the only time Scotty Bowman has coached in this building as coach of Detroit, his team was beaten 8-1. Payback time is right.
And how about we're seeing right here, this is something you cannot do as a defenseman. You have the puck on your stick, that puck has to be drilled down. He babies it, and the end result is a gift once again for the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall for that first intermission. I wonder what was said in that locker room. Roy's body language is poor all night. He's flailing, he can't see, I'm getting bumped, this and that. He's upset. The Canadiens' head coach at the time, Mario Tremblay, who was hired by the Montreal Canadiens after they made a coaching change less than half a dozen games into the 95-96 season. Okay, that's kind of strange, but he was a former NHL player, Okay. A former Montreal Canadiens player? Okay. And a former teammate of Patrick Roy's? Okay. This guy's got it handled, even though he had no prior coaching experience to this job. What? Think of how much head coaching jobs are handled with kid gloves in so many markets, especially Montreal. What happened next? Wasn't nothing nice. Whatever was said at intermission did not work, because less than 3 minutes into the second period, with just 1 second remaining in Brisebois' 5-minute major, Vyacheslav Kozlov scores his hat-trick goal to make it 6-1 Detroit. The game's not even half over.
10 seconds of this power play. Fetisov, Fedorov, Kozlov in front. There's the hat trick. And it's a power play goal, their 4th of the night.
Well, let's face it, Patrick Roy has absolutely no chance on this play. But Patrick Roy is going to have to adapt to the way this big line is playing for the Wings. You have to stay on your feet. They're passing it so much. Patrick Roy is overcommitting as he does here. Terrific patience once again by Kozlov, and Roy is down and out. A good example of it right here. With all the movement and passing by these Red Wing, the big line by the Red Wings, he has to stay on his feet, and Kozlov is wide open in front.
Minute and a half later, Matthew Dandino scores 7-1 Detroit.
Cleared by Yzerman, and a breakaway here for Dandino in, and he scores! Now what a throw for the rookie to score here at the Montreal Forum.
Patrick Roy is looking over to the bench like he wants out. But what a thrill, as you mentioned, Dandino scored.
They're gonna pull Roy, right? They probably should have pulled him after the first, but they're gonna pull him now, right? Greg Johnson scores his 2nd of the game just over halfway through regulation. It's 8-1 Detroit. They're pulling Roy, right?
Point of the second period, and here's Johnson scoring on a nifty feed from Keith Primo. 8-1 Detroit.
Well, Scotty Bowman's even in this building now, coaching the Red Wings. He lost 8-1, and now he's leading 8-1, and this game is barely half over. They've made it look so easy.
And then this. Oh, you can't forget this. Sergei Fedorov streaking in. Mid-90s Sergei Fedorov was unreal. But a slap shot from that far away and against Patrick Roy? It's bordering on disrespectful. It's bordering on a dump-in. Roy makes the stop, and the sarcastic chorus of cheers. Patrick Roy's letting the crowd know, yeah, oh, thank you very much. Look at the lady behind him. She thinks it's hilarious. And I mean, it is hilarious, unless what happens next happens. Less than 2 minutes after the 8-1 goal, Igor Larionov feeds Sergei Fedorov, there he is again, for the 9-1 Detroit goal. And after that, Patrick Roy's night is done. Or is it? Oh, his night on the ice is done, but he's got some work to do. This, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the greatest death stares in NHL history, and it's between a coach and a player on his team, and you can't even see one of the people's faces who's involved. Patrick Roy walks right by Mario Tremblay and stares him in the face, and then there's a moment. If you have a temper, you know the moment. Maybe you throw a little barb, maybe you don't. Maybe you just decide, you know what, I'll give him a little glance, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be the bigger person, and you know what? On second thought, I didn't do very well in French class, but whatever I am not the one is en français, Patrick Roy said it, at least to himself. And he walks right back, and you go, oh, he's about to get in Tremblay's face. Even worse. See how there's no glass behind the bench? Roy walks right over to Montreal Canadiens president, Ronald Corey, and informs him this will be his last game as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. And after that, Roy just walks right past Mario Tremblay and sits down. And if you were to hold a windbreaker jacket right above Patrick Roy's head, you could have floated all the way up to the rafters. And then, of course, the dang it of this video is that Detroit blew an 8-goal lead. No, they won 11-1. Here's how damaging allowing 9 goals in one game is to a goalie's stats. Heading into the game, that season, Patrick Roy had made 588 saves on 641 shots for a .917 save percentage. That's really, really good. After allowing 9 goals on 26 shots, that's 9 goals and 17 saves, he was a .907. One game did that. One. And you might go, yeah, well, it was early in the season. He played 22 games. It had that big of an effect. But enough about the statistics. Of course, then there's the matter of Patrick Roy kinda asked for a trade live on the bench. December 6th, 1995. The trade. Patrick Roy and Montreal Canadiens captain Mike Keane were traded to the new Colorado Avalanche, who had just previously been moved from the Quebec Nordiques. This was their first season, and the trade was in exchange for Andrei Kovalenko, Martin Ruchinski, and goaltender Jocelyn Thibault. Now, of course, this is a dang it video and not a trade tree video, but I can get a little sidetracked. Andrei Kovalenko played just one season with the Montreal Canadiens, 51 games played, 17 goals, 17 assists, 34 points. Not the greatest start, but I gotta say, while this trade might be looked at as a failure, Martin Ruchinski was absolutely not. 432 games played with the Montreal Canadiens and nearly 300 points. And going to Colorado on the offensive side of things, Mike Keane, he was a decent forward. He was more of a grinder though. 223 games played, 27 goals in his career as an Av, 37 assists, 64 points. Dude, so far, I'd say the Habs are winning this trade. Oh, and then the goalies. Oh, there might have been a moment in time, a brief moment in time where you could trick yourself into thinking Montreal won this. Because after that trade, Patrick Roy had a .909 save percentage for the Colorado Avalanche. It's all right. Jocelyn Thibault, .913 for the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe this is the guy they need. Just maybe. Until Patrick Roy throws up a .921 save percentage in the 1996 Stanley Cup playoffs and wins the Conn Smythe Trophy as the Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup in their first season. And that Stanley Cup was the third of Patrick Roy's career, and it happened to come just 7 months after getting hung out to dry in the Montreal Forum for 9 goals. Patrick Roy played in 478 games as a member of the Colorado Avalanche. Patrick Roy had a cartoony record with the Avs of 262 wins, 140 losses, and 65 ties. That's right, Patrick Roy was spared the indignity of having to play in an era with shootouts. And it should be mentioned that in those nearly 500 games, Patrick Roy had a .918 save percentage. His playoff record? Preposterous. 133 games played, an 81-52 record, and a .922. I said .922 playoff save percentage. Jocelyn Thibault was alright for Montreal. He played in 158 games and put up a .908 save percentage, which isn't bad, but he was traded for Patrick Roy. His playoff record? Not quite as good as Roy's, just 11 games played with the Montreal Canadiens, a 2-7 record, and an .885 save percentage. This, dang it, is not on Patrick Roy for allowing 9 goals. Goalies are gonna have a bad night. In this case, one of the most legendary of them had a bad night. This, dang it, is on the Montreal Canadiens. This is even one of those ones where I'm sure Habs fans will be like, no, we know, he's right. And maybe the situation was beyond repair in Montreal anyway. Maybe it was time to tear things down, switch things up. Who knows? But it seemed like things were heading in a bad direction. A coach completely hung his goalie out to dry, decided to give him a death stare in front of all his teammates, the home crowd, and television, and that was it. We started this video talking about handling stars differently and whether or not they deserve preferential treatment. There have been plenty of examples of star players getting indignant with their coaches disciplining them, and then it ends up benefiting the team. I remember Bruce Boudreau benching Alexander Ovechkin for the final shift of a game and Ovechkin getting upset. The Caps tied it. Starting the second period, the 6th goal, the 7th goal, the 8th goal, the 9th goal, the death stare. That's leaning into it a little too hard, don't you think? Patrick Roy sure seemed to think so, and the Montreal Canadiens paid for it dearly. Losing one of the best goalies of all time? That's a dang it. So, what'd you think of this one? Leave a comment in the comment box down below, and don't leave your goalie in for 9 goals. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Putting glass behind the bench and, I don't know, maybe just pretend you didn't hear him when he asked for a trade. It's probably what I would have done.